everyone, I'm Olly Brand, or Olly on Twitter, Olly with a Y. As Mark says, I work for IBM. In 1981, I was born before Random Design's iconic logo, and in 2000 I joined IBM. I actually joined 15 years ago today. I joined as part of an integrated degree scheme where 18-year-olds were taken and sponsored through university by IBM. We did 3 years of working as an IBMer and as a university student in parallel. And it was actually very great preparation. I worked in something called the Ledger Control Group, and I was kind of a jack of all trades and a master of none. I was able to work on APIs, I was able to work with DB2, I was able to work on Excel products. And I really started to mature in my role and really enjoyed working at IBM and decided after the university that I wanted to continue on. And then I moved into operations in 2003. I worked on management information and business intelligence as a developer. Essentially, I was a glorified Excel hack, or Excel heroics, as we would term it at the time. I had my first brief brush with offshoring in 2003 when I went to update a server in our server group, and I noticed there was a user with a really odd username, Amos Warroop, and I thought, who would want to declare war on object-oriented program? So I kicked him, and I spent half an hour beating and kicking him, and then I went back to tell my boss that I just kicked a hacker off our network, to be greeted by his face saying, yeah, Amos Warroop, he can't connect to our server. Let me look into that for you. So, that was my first taste in offshoring, was we started to share techniques and data and move some of our processes offshore. In 2005, after 2 years of being in operations, I moved into consulting. It was one of the best things I actually ever did. I really, really enjoyed being a consultant. I went out on the road, I learned more about data and consulting, and ended up working back again on MI and BI projects, so management information business intelligence projects. And I was doing that for clients, so we were looking at their data, looking at what they needed to know, looking at where the business was going, looking at key metrics, KPIs, what they need to understand, what they need to know, when and how to deliver. And I really, really enjoyed that aspect of the job. In fact, I love that a lot more than developing in Java, which I'm sure some of you can understand and appreciate as well. I was driving 40,000 miles a year, which looking back and in hindsight was crazy. And I was spending this huge amount of time in a car. I never knew about double speed and podcasts, but I wish I did. That would have got me through even more podcasts. And in short, I was getting to a point where life was getting pretty chaotic, and I was feeling pretty burnt out. I read these two just life-changing books, Getting Things Done by David Allen and Before I Work Week by Tim Ferriss. Has anyone read either of these two books or read one of these two books? If you take nothing else away from my lecture, please have a look at these two books. They are superb, and they open my eyes to a completely new way of thinking about things, about the concept of remote working, about the concept of self-development, about the concept of being organised, and using that organisation to achieve further productivity, to then further myself and to then further a team. And it's really building blocks. And it still took me 2 years to work out what I actually wanted to achieve. So when I switched into consulting in 2005, the reason I was doing 40,000 miles a year is because I wanted to live here at home in Cornwall. While the dream was great, 40,000 miles was not. So in 2010, I managed to engineer an opportunity to go and work for a team in operations again, doing one of the client sites for IBM UK and Ireland. And the commuting stopped. I worked from home, became a remote worker, and I kind of felt like I reclaimed a part of myself and a part of my life, because 40,000 miles on the road was not what it was, to be perfectly truthful. So I started remote working. Is anyone else a remote worker? Cool. In returning to operations and starting remote working, I kind of was looking around trying to think, what is there to remote working? Is this novelty? Is this going to die a death? Is this going to be the future? And I stumbled across this Richard Branson quote when he claims offices just won't exist and people wonder why we ever worked at them. And it really resonated. Although I have to say for Richard it's obviously a lot easier because he's a multi-billionaire and he's very successful. Me, I was freaking it. So I had 4 main fears that were driving me. One is that I was going into a career dead end. So I've been a consultant, I was used to a very fast pace of life, I was used to people climbing all over me to try and get on top of me, I was used to trying to climb over other people as well, and I was just trying to go and develop my career and develop myself, and I worried that moving to operations, sitting myself in Cornwall, it would be very easy to overlook me for promotions, it would be very easy to get rid of me. I would potentially go mad working on my own without other people to talk to. You can tell with the speed I talk, I do like to talk. And I was also worried I would just sit and play Gran Turismo up to the point I got sacked, and I would deliver no actual value to the company as well. These were very real fears, and these kind of led after a few weeks, months, and even years of working on it into the kind of pros and cons that I kind of developed and grew at through the process of remote working. So the first one, the biggie, really is flexibility. There is nothing like flexibility of working from home. Things like couriers, collecting things, dropping things off, walking the dog, being there to support another half, just the list is endless of things you can do when you're not in the office. Paradoxically, it's very hard to define working hours because you are there, you're at home, there's your computer, you could be doing work while you're doing work. You have to kind of balance and justify reasons for embracing flexibility, but also kind of saying, well, actually, I don't want to spend every waking hour at work, or if I do spend time at work, I really want to make it done before I'm going to go. This led to easy to have work-life balance. It is very easy, by comparison to when you're doing 40,000 miles on the road, to have a work-life balance if you work from home. However, it's harder to escape work for the same reasons I listed before. It is tricky if you're there and your laptop's there and that's your office and it's in your house. You can't just go, well, I'll just forget about that, see you later. You kind of are stuck with it. So you kind of have to develop coping systems and kind of come around to your way of thinking or your way of pattern of work. One of the main reasons I had is I wanted to reclaim the 40,000 miles. I wanted to spend more time with my family and friends. I wanted to be part of the community. And that was one of the really, really big benefits. And that one I realised really early on. The first one of that is the risk of going mad. As much as I love my parents, living quite close to them is at times challenging. And same with friends and family, and also the same working on my own. Day in, day out, I'm in an office on my own. I did slightly concern myself with going mad. And I put an asterisk next to that because one of the massive plus points for me was I got to get a dog. So the dog has stopped me going mad is my one excuse for getting it. And the zero commute, not just the 40,000 miles a year, but if you think most people start their day by getting in a car, driving in traffic, getting really hacked off when people cut you up and people beat the horn at you and you don't really want to park, and all of the things that are associated with the start of your day went for me. And I start my day first thing in the morning is when I'm most productive. And suddenly, instead of being frustrated or instead of being hacked off, I was at my desk within a few minutes of being up without a better pass on that. The flip side of that is you're not driving to an office where you're visible to your boss, you're visible to everyone else, and you're on tap. And some things really are simpler. I mean, I'm sure I'm telling something you already know, but some things really are better face-to-face and easier face-to-face. So as a remote work, you kind of have to work around that and get used to it. The resilience goes with flexibility, and then there's sick days as well. As a lone wolf, and as a flexible worker, you are able to do more things than you can in an office. You are far more resilient, you are far more capable of working in strange situations, of going to your mother-in-law's and staying there and working, or going on holiday and tapping into email and working. You've got a lot more resilience and built-in skill because you're used to it. It's what you do day in day out. You're not dependent on an office, you're not dependent on going to a location. It becomes a little bit simpler in that way. The trade-off is you don't have a dependence on technology. So I would be stuck without my laptop, I would be stuck without a high-speed internet connection. These are things that you have to provide and you have to work out as a flexible mobile worker. And those things are not something you have to consider when you're in an office. And similarly, there are massive savings to me. Like I don't go to a coffee shop anymore. Well, I do actually go to a coffee shop. I don't go to a coffee shop or the canteen for lunch. I make my own lunch to have my own breakfast. I can quite happily not spend the life of money that I was spending when I was in the office or the canteen. I mean, hands up if you would eat in a canteen at work. Okay, that's not as many as I thought. The slight snag is the cost saving. You have to offset it against the fact that you're self-funding your own office. So I have to pay for my own electricity, I have to pay for the carpet that I walk on, I have to pay for the fact that I'm in a room for 10 hours of my day, and that room is only dedicated to an office, so part of my house is lost to work. And that's something that you kind of have to get over and set aside. These are the pros and cons that I kind of formulated that then led to my lessons learned today. So, number one, remote working is a skill. This sounded really obvious, but I wanted to convey as my first point anyway, because I really feel it's a skill. It needs to be practiced, it needs to be developed, it needs to be learned and nurtured just like any other skill. And in truth, I think working in office is a skill as well. It's just a lot easier because you're working in office, a load of other people are also working in office, so you can copy them. It's far clearer what your behaviour is going to be. It's far more defined and far more confined. You're not going to turn up. Well, actually, I'm going to statement. Two, you want to get organised. GTD is a fantastic way for me to do that, and whatever method you want to choose or pick, you are going to have to get organised. You are now going to be responsible for what you produce, and what you produce represents who you are, because you aren't in the office, you're not sat next to your boss. The only way to impress your boss, your peers and other people is to be productive, and to work well with them remotely. And getting organised is essential. Without being organised, the path of burnout or dropping on productivity for other reasons as well. I think I cannot stress enough how getting organised helped me, and it's helped me to work remotely. Three, establish a routine. This was a biggie for me because I'm a runner and I also like to surf. So getting my day into a routine became really key, and it really helped my co-workers as well, because they started to know what to expect from me. So rather than I would appear at 9 o'clock in an office and disappear at 5 o'clock, I would have a working pattern, and I would establish that, where I would run at this certain time, I would go to a building site at this certain time and watch all my money poured into the ground. And people knew where I was, so that expectation was set. If it's between the hours of 8:30 and 9:30, you're not going to get me. I'm going to be on my building site from 9:30 till 4. I'm all yours. I'll generally be there, unless I covertly put my same time status to board meeting, which means I'm certain. The other key thing about establishing a routine is you really can only afford to get caught at 3 PM so many times by a courier in your dressing gown. First-hand experience has taught me the first time is okay, the second time they look at you funny, and the third time you really got to come up with some good excuses. I found that it's also demotivating, because in all seriousness, if you're still in your dressing gown at 3 o'clock, you are not having a good day. I, for one, was a prisoner at my desk. I made my commitment. I was going to go running, so there's no point having a shower, so I would leave it, and then I would get stuck in a conference call, and then another conference call, and then firefighting, and then it's 3 o'clock when you're still in your dressing gown. I think establishing a routine is really key to kind of get yourself into the zone, getting into work, and just making it repeatable. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to start making decisions like, should I have a shower now? No, you've already had your shower. You're dressed. You're ready for work. That unexpected Skype at 7 AM, not such a problem. Not such a panic. The do of the Skype isn't going to signal your instant impending doom as your boss wants to see you when you're not quite as tired. Yeah, so please establish your routine. And now you establish your routine, you need to be flexible. So I really feel one of the many benefits of working from home, as I said, was flexibility, one of the pros. And if you're going to work from home, you're going to have to accept that that flexibility comes at a price. So there will be times when you need to stay late. Just as in an office, you sometimes to get ahead need to stay past 5 PM. You can't really control that, and I think it's give and take. So sometimes I've had to stay up late, and I've had to work into the early hours of the morning to offset the time difference. And it's really key to kind of keep it in perspective, and also make sure you don't give too much away. So when you are being flexible, take some time back as well. So I joked about going surfing and setting my board meeting status. No one begrudges me that, because they know that consistently I performed and I will deliver, and my productivity is good. If my board meetings start affecting my productivity, then I've got a problem, and then I would be further high. But I think the flexible give and takeness means you need to do both. Otherwise you get to burn out again. Otherwise you get to be taken advantage of and spending 14 hours in front of the desk, which is no fun. Number 5, some things are easy face to face. You could view this as a negative point because you aren't there, but I'd rather view this as a positive point. Say when you are there, really value it. Use the time to talk to people. Use the time. There's pictures from when I worked at Hyderabad, and it just was great to get to know people more. It rapidly accelerated the process. There's only so much you can do on Skype. There's only so much you can do on the phone. When you do get out there, it's important to really make the most of your time out there, getting to know people, doing business, as well as personal level communication. And I really think it's crucial for someone that does remote work to not forget that office does exist, and some people prefer to work in that office, and sometimes you have to go on their terms. Or sometimes it's that critical that you just have to be in an office, and therefore finding it futile. Number 6, doing your day job is treading water. I had an awesome image, but it's a Getty image, and I didn't really want to get involved in that with IBM again. So I'll describe the image of a couple swimming or treading water in the sea with a great white behind them. And it was epic, but you'll have to make it with a pig, I'm afraid. Essentially, if you're going to go to work and you're going to do your day job, you probably won't get sacked. I'm going to put that out there. If you want to get ahead and you want to get noticed, you are going to have to do more. And that's no more focus than when you're remote working. Because when you're remote working, as I said before, you're not in front of your boss. You're not with your peers. You're on your own. You're in isolation. You have to go that extra bit further. I feel there's a great pressure to go that extra bit further. And again, using the GTD, using your organised self, you can carry that level of productivity, or I try and carry that level of productivity through my day. Being organised, I try and maximise what I can do in my working hours. Being flexible, I tune my working hours to run the most productive, which generally tends to be 6:30 to 9:30 in the morning. 7, backup. 50 million internet points, if anyone can tell me what the background picture is. Cool. Okay, I'm not on my screen, sorry, on the actual background. 50 million internet points to you. my favourite place. This is a disaster. This, when you're working from home, is the last thing you need. This was on the day that I had a product going to UAT with about 50 people expecting to use it. My machine blue screened at 9:30. I rebooted it, and it came up with this. And we had to hold this PGP encryption on our machines, so there's no way I was getting to my boot record in a hurry. So the fact I couldn't fix it by cheating the system would have meant I was completely and utterly stuck. I'm on my own, I'm in Cornwall, what am I going to do? Go to PC World and buy another PC? Not likely. Not within a reasonable time frame. So having a backup process is absolutely essential for any remote working. If you don't have it, or even if you do have it, you need to develop your system, you need to test your system, and you need to periodically just ensure that your backup system does work. Because when this happens, it is the most sickening, horrible feeling for a remote worker. It's not great when you're in an office and you've got technical support, but it's even worse when you're on your own. And the other thing to remember as well is because you have that dependence on technology, because I require an internet connection, a fast internet connection, you have to have another place where you can do that if your internet connection goes down. And it can't be next door, because generally if your internet connection has gone down, their internet connection has gone down. So it pays to try and place yourself with a good few key areas. Coffee shops are a good one, especially if you can get them in different towns that are close by. So you've always got a backup route and a backup strategy. And that leads us into my last point, which tools are your friend. So when you're trying to be productive, when you're trying to back up, when you're trying to work remotely, there are some amazing tools out there. And it reminds me of my first Agile on the beach when Dan North did a keynote. He was describing a mechanic dropping his monkey wrench and unable to use his wrench correctly, and said, would you trust that person that's working on your car if they can't even operate a basic monkey wrench? And no, you definitely wouldn't. And it's the same for us IT workers. We live and die by our tools. And no more so than a remote worker, because you are dependent on them. They will link to your team, they will link to your productivity. So really these key things like Skype, Evernote, Box, all these cloud-based solutions are just superb for remote working, and the more you can harness them, the more they'll save minutes off your day, and the minutes really, really, really add up. So when we're saying about the 1% that Sky go after, and the Sky team cycling the Tour de France, it really is exactly the same for remote working. If you save yourself 5 minutes, at the end of the week that's pretty much half an hour, and it multiplies out massively. So please do use tools. In the appendix of the presentation I put all the tools I use, and by too scatterbrained to go remember them all now. But yeah, please do put me on Twitter if you want any recommendations. So that's my summary of remote working lessons learned. I think those are the 8 most important things that I've learned personally from remote working. So, moving on to my team who have spoken well about me. We are essential to a multi-billion-dollar business. Narcos is out on Netflix and it's brilliant. That's also a multi-billion-dollar business, but that's not quite the same thing. And it's one of those things that's quite daunting to think, hang on a minute, because we deliver MIV on how the business is doing to the business leaders of global business services, IBM, Europe. And that is, staggering, it's multiple billion dollars a year. The information we provide helps them in managing that. So it's quite a bit of pressure. As a team, we're based all over Europe and India. These are outdated, and I've deliberately shrunk them down so none of my team get offended by the fact you can see their picture on the slide, hopefully on the internet. In 2012, we had a success and a challenge. So you may remember I started in the UK and Ireland, and in 2012 we moved into taking over Europe, and that's when things got a bit more serious. And we were criticised for being too slow. Our team size doubled, as did expectations on us. Our output and responsibility quadrupled. We went from having 50 reports and 150 end users I could name by name to 300 plus reports and 600 end users. We got a lot of feedback from the team that said they didn't feel there was a strong team cohesion. We were trying to merge 2 teams, bring in people as well, and people felt isolated. And as you see with the disparity of Europe and India as well, we couldn't just say, hey, let's get everyone together, let's have a party, or let's do some social networking. It became challenging. It was quite tricky for us. We also had a high churn rate, to be expected slightly because of the way the team was structured, but it was a noticeable problem, or a noticeable challenge, I would say. And we decided, for whatever reasons, to silo our developers. So we had a series of developers that were really good at developing reports, we had a series of developers that were really good at developing data and back-end solutions, and we had a series of developers that were really good with Excel. And we had no cross-promotion, no skill sharing going on between the two. So, we looked to adopt Agile, and we hoped it would provide us with the answers. My friend Kevin joined the team, and he'd just been on an Agile conference, and he actually suggested it. He was the spark. And I booked my Agile on the beach ticket already as well, so we took that as the sign that it was time to start our Agile journey. As Mark alluded to, we're both on Formula 1, so it's going to be a perfect for a start. So we established the goals. We wanted to create an environment where everyone felt like they could excel. Feedback in the team was that people were not necessarily happy with the job they were doing, they weren't necessarily happy with the things in their way, and they wanted to make progress. Everyone was hungry, people wanted to get on, and we were actually probably stopping that with some of our processes. So our first point was that we wanted to make sure every team member felt like they could excel in the environment we were putting them in. And two, we wanted to define clear roles and a career path. So in the past, people were responsible for, say, an Excel workbook. We wanted them to know what their job role was. We wanted them to know that if they did well in that job role, there were rewards, there was a stepping stone, there was a platform by which they could have a career, and then make that visible. Three, we wanted to remove existing blockers, which really ties into one. So we were aware that we had a few issues, we had a few systems that were merging, we had a few things that were quite complicated that didn't need to be, they needed to be removed and worked on. Four, we needed to increase our speed, and five, we needed to improve our overall quality. Does anyone think those are good goals? No hands, that's good, because they're terrible, because you can't measure them. So one of the more nice things to aim for, and while we enjoy great aiming for them, in reality, when I read them back, I appreciate that they didn't set objectives. How do we know if we're going faster? How do we know if we're increasing quality? How do you hit those goals? So we learned from a lot in the process. We decided to structure our teams very differently. So I said before, we previously siloed all of our developers into different categories. And now we've decided that we form squads around products. And we'd identify a product owner, and we'd identify a lead developer, and we would make sure that we paired these from the different stacks. So if we had a strong developer as a product owner, we would pair them with a data developer. And we would use that kind of inference to transfer skills naturally and try not to force it. We would then have a dedicated support person, which would be generally a more junior person coming into the team, or a dedicated support resource that would work with that product as well, to increase their product knowledge and help take some of the flack off support for the team. And then the rest of the team, the reason I kept it as four people is we kept that flexible. So we didn't actually align people rigorously to squads, we let people kind of float around. So we ended up with a series of developers that are working in a pool, and they then work in accordance with what the product owner and the developer need on that product, and depending which product is in which cycle of stage and where it's at. And then we refined our release process. Now this looks a lot like a waterfall, it's not static. I wouldn't put a waterfall project on a slide at an Agile conference. However, if you bear with me slightly, we created MPWCDTA, which is not easy for dyslexic to rattle through. And this is the minimum viable product we could demonstrate to our Chief Operating Officer. So this could be slideware, this could be anything, this was just to get buy-in and to establish funding and to let him know what we were working on to raise our visibility and to get some form of stakeholder buy-in. From that we agreed we would produce a minimum viable product. And the idea is that these would be done inside sprints, with every sprint producing a shippable product. That is a dream, we will get there one day. Very fun. Then we would move on to version 1 of the product, which is when we would first release it to our less tame audience, if you will. So from UAT, we would have quite a few interactions, and we would drop things in, and we would let UAT users feedback and key stakeholders feedback, and we would cycle that all the way through until we were happy that we were going to go live with version 1 of our product, and that's when we release it to the masses, so our 600 users would see the reports then. And then we would go through each release sprint, work on defects, sort things through, and do point releases until we had to make some major change or a significant underlying structural change that would result in a point release. So yeah, it's like waterfall, but I would never put a waterfall slide up in Agile implementation. And look at the top, that's Agile. So we tried it. We set up a daily scrum. When you work in different time zones, India is 4.5 to 5.5 hours behind us. Central Europe's an hour ahead. We ended up with a scenario where 9:30 was about the only time you could get everybody in the office. And 9:30 is not ideal, because some fast maths will tell you that's in the afternoon for our Indian colleagues. But 9:30 tended to work well. Although we broke everything out to products, we actually found that running a scrum call with everybody on the Zoom call created a lot of cohesion. So we set it up, and we set one call, and we said, everyone go through 3 questions, and off we go. We're going to do 2-week sprints, and we're going to start on Wednesday, because lots of people were out on Friday, lots of people were out on Monday. Wednesday allowed us to kind of get more control and get more buy-in from people who come along and participate in the sprints. It also meant we had Thursday and Friday as a buffer should we need to do anything drastic for a production release or another release. And we generally tend to release on a Friday to give us the weekend to test if we had to in an emergency, so everything's ready for Monday. And Monday is the start of the IBM week, so that's really our target. We had one Scrum Master. We decided one Scrum Master to rule them all. Was a good move, and that's a dedicated role. So it's someone who is, they do have other roles within the team, but they're primarily the Scrum Master, and they run the call, they establish the call. We tried to load balance our sprints according to where products are in their cycle. So if something's in UAT, we're going to anticipate a lot more defects than if something were right at the start of its development. So we tried to get our sprint velocity balanced, so we might do 60-40, where we say we're anticipating 40% of our time will be on defects, 60% of our time will be improving the product and carrying forward. That's one of the hardest things we've had to do. We're still learning very much on that. We decided to use Skype for our Scrum calls because it led to a higher level of integration, and people felt more valued looking at people. And although some people don't want to be on a webcam, you soon get used to it. It takes time, but you do get used to it. And we put people on. The only slight limitation with Skype is you can only have 10 people on video at once. So we did have a few audio people on calls, and people have to disable and enable webcams to balance it. But it really wasn't anywhere near the hassle versus the value that it delivered. So we stuck with that. And we set out rational collaboration lifecycle management, which I'll come on to in a bit more. And we established cadence. And we use retrospectives to refine it and shape it. So at the moment, we have a product owners meeting every Tuesday, and if that's midway through a sprint, we'll discuss how it's going. Are we likely to hit the sprint? Do we need to start descoping things and calling out to our stakeholders and not going to get it right? Are we steering the ship? And we found that was a great opportunity for all the product owners to learn what each of the other product owners were doing. So if there are product owners that were stuck and there were product owners that were twiddling their thumbs, we found that was quite a good way for people to negotiate resource. And if you remember, I said on the previous slide that we had a team that's not necessarily aligned to products. We just have teams with skilled developers, and they negotiate and autonomously decide what they're going to work on, and what stories and what tasks and what feedback they're going to update. And then every Wednesday we would have a call. We got everybody together, and we would go through a retrospective at the end of the sprint, or again we go through what's the sprint doing, what are we descoping, what do we need to increase, where are our problems, are there any pain points, and just sharing that information with the whole entire team. So then we were, obviously that's a little bit bigger meeting with more people, so we tried to keep it a short meeting and a focused meeting on just problems and just quick status updates. And this kind of led us to the parodies, valuing tools to help us value people more. It was one of the things that kept coming out of what we were doing, is that we were only really as good as our tools, and only really as good as we were using our tools. And I know Agile is supposed to be more about valuing the people than tools, and I do appreciate that, but without the tools, we really struggle to value the people. And number one in that is video conferencing. So we really found that as soon as we started video conferencing, there was a lot more team cohesion, there was a lot more integration. There's some stats I'm not 100% sure I buy into, which is 80% of communication isn't verbal. I'm not sure a webcam conveys that much more, and I'm also not sure of that stat entirely, but it definitely does feel like you're more engaged. You're way more engaged if you're looking at someone. I was on a video conference where someone opened up a newspaper, and in the art of opening the newspaper, the video conference camera panned straight to them because it was noise sensitive. And they were right there looking at their newspaper, looking at the webcam, looking at themselves on a screen, and you think, yeah, at that point on a phone call, you would have just carried on doing that, but now you're back in the call. Which is good. So yeah, I'd really encourage video conferencing massively. And number two is social media and instant messaging. As a remote worker and in Agile as well, I really feel that these two tools allow you to communicate better, store documentation. If you need to share something, a collaborative platform is just the best way to share it, a wiki, for example. And all the social media integrations that come with that allow you to follow each other, allow you to kind of know what each other are doing in your lives. And there is that case of isolation when you're remote working as well, that really you can get over if you use social media correctly. It's not get over, sorry, it's a substitute. But we got a platform called IBM same time and a platform called IBM Connections, and for obvious reasons we have to use those. And they're actually surprisingly good. It's brilliant. We have an integrated wiki system, and things get tagged, and you can follow people, and you can do everything you expect from social media. And we found as a team that really helped to start to use and to push that, and to really kind of work on that collaboratively, and to collaborate using it as a platform. And then three, we've got rational collaboration lifecycle management, which I would love to show lots of screenshots of, because this really is the backbone of how we do things. But all of our stuff is pretty much confidential, so therefore, I did try and get some screenshots, and every time I went through one, if you can work out a few simple acronyms, you can gain information that I would be shocked for some people. So what I would encourage them to do, if anyone's curious about it, is to go and visit the website, and there's lots of videos on YouTube and experimental kind of cases, and it's really worth a watch. Essentially for me, it's a way of taking the post-it notes virtually. Because I think that post-it notes are such a vital tool in Agile, and obviously they don't work. If I've got post-it notes on my wall in my spare room or my office, they are not much good to anyone else on my team. So this way we actually got team visual. And there's the old adage, what gets measured gets done. And we found that as soon as we started using CLM, we started putting things out there, we started creating our stories on it, we started managing our tasks through it, managing our sprints through it, using Kanban boards through it. It's an incredibly flexible tool. It's built by 400 people in 25 different countries using Agile. So there's proof that I don't say Agile scale. And it does, you can work remotely, and it's a decent product. And number 4 is travel workshops and face-to-face. I love these as tools now, because for me, the norm is remote working. So to do any form of travel workshop and face-to-face, I have to justify it typically. So I really have to come up with a business case that enables me to go and do that. And that puts an extra emphasis on things for me. And then when I'm there, I have to be mindful of the fact that I'm not going to be there again probably tomorrow. So I really try and get the best I possibly can out of all these things. And there's times when, as I was saying before, you really do need to be face-to-face with someone. You really, really do need to look at them and to talk to them and show them through something. And as good as Skype is, as good as some of the other options are, Deck series, another one we use, telepresence, there are times when you just need to be face-to-face. So to treat that as a tool, to value that and to plan that, and to plan things like workshops, and face-to-face meetings makes them that much more special and that much more of a weapon in your arsenal of tools. Here we've actually combined Skype and remote working, so we've got a couple of our colleagues from Spain over into our office in Paisley, and we've conferenced in 2 of our colleagues from India as well. So we're combining the technologies and meeting and face-to-face work as well. I mean, there is the old adage of what do you do when you're needing to be in 2 places at once. I mean, there's no way around it at the moment. You can't just split yourself in 2, you can't teleport. So in that approach, best can do attitude and tools such as Skype and being flexible and planning and doing workshops and travelling to where the most important place is are really, really key weapons of the task. And it all worked. Right. Does anyone know who that is?
Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce Springsteen, the boss. This is a still from VH1 Storytellers, where he goes through and describes one of my favourite songs. And he gives this amazing, inspirational kind of explanation of lyric by lyric of every single thing. And then right at the end he goes, but that's not what I was thinking at the time. And that's not really what happened. And then he justifies it by saying, but that's what I felt, and that's what I feel. And for me it's kind of the same thing. All these things that I've covered are things that I personally felt and gone through. And we didn't start right at some of the places. This is kind of where we've ended up. And it kind of works. It is far from perfect. It is quite difficult managing a large team. It is quite difficult working remotely. So we've kind of adopted a Kaizen attitude, and my wife describes me as a bit of a spring-spaniel puppy that never stays still and does fastest and enjoys it greatly. So I'm always looking at the next thing. What can I improve? What can we improve? I really feel Agile helps me massively in this space because it gives me the flexibility and room to start doing that. So we try all sorts of things. So one thing I'm going to go back from the conference today is that I want to look at rotating the Scrum Master. So seeing if we can rotate the Scrum Master, maybe through product owners, maybe through developers, maybe even through the support team. Just starting to rotate and see what that does. And the concept of the scientific method of checking things out, seeing things, how is this working, how is that working, what's going on here, how's that going, does that work? I really enjoy that sort of thing. I'm keen to progress that as much as I possibly can. That leads on to kind of Agile fluency. So in Dreamland, we're a 4-star organisation, we're a team. This is great. Has anyone heard of Martin Fowler's Agile fluency before? Okay. It's an interesting kind of way of ranking your Agile project, I suppose. I'd be interested to see what Toby and Craig make of it on their talk when they're providing their own framework. We very much quickly got to focus on value statements because it's a very easy sell. So we were required pretty much from the 4th week of trial and our second sprint, we were pretty much focused on value and then we're going to crack that. To get to the second stage, proving that a little bit harder. So we're trying desperately hard to deliver value, and this is 3 years in and we're only on 2 stars. I'm not entirely sure how to get to 3 stars. But you can start to see who's involved in that. So you're asking a team to change the way it is. So in 2012, you're asking a team to say, we need to break our silos. We need to start adopting Agile. We need to do sprints. We need to be on Skype. We need to do these things. And then that led to a focus on value. So we're doing these things because it does this. because we want to achieve this, because as a team we need to deliver more value, we need to deliver faster and more high quality. And then you start to look at your team skills and your team skill shift, and we saw in our team, we saw people pairing up, working together, voluntarily sharing their skills, and working towards that to bring value. And then it comes to building cadence and the little dream logo of scrum and sprint and deliver that we're working towards. And we're nearly there. We're desperately trying to do that. That's our current sticking point, and that's something that I'm always looking at a Kaizen approach to try and improve, and we're always open to try and do things. And it's not just me leading this, there are other people that bring their ideas. Any idea, anyone in the team can come forward and suggest improvements. Then you're looking at your 3 stars, which is where you start to optimise value. And at that point, you're expecting your organisation to shift. So at that point, you've gone beyond your team, you're at your stakeholders, you're at your end users, you're expecting them to change the way they interact with you, the way they potentially do their jobs even. And then you've got the whole entire organisational culture, the cultural shift, in the optimising process, with the cost combination and everything else that goes with it. So yeah, in our future, I would very much like to get to 3 stars, and that's my current and next focus. Probably really should be focusing on concreting 2 stars, if I'm truthful. But it's a great framework. It's an interesting way to talk and compare products with other people as well. So, in conclusion, we're working at Agile for both value propositions, which is a small statement, but you probably have a separate entire presentation on that. And what I mean by that is that I think myself personally and anyone else who works in the services industry or works for another employer or delivers value to a customer, we're all effectively a service. We're all effectively trying to deliver value to someone or something. And I think that the 2 overlapping things massively in working in Agile, they allow you to do this flexibly, they allow you to get more value out of your time, they allow you to be effectively more effective. And I really feel that strongly that the 2 combined do work together, although there are challenges, and although it might not be necessarily that there are strengths and benefits, there could be strengths and benefits. I really feel that both are a way to get more value out of life, out of your product, out of your team. I really strongly believe that remote working will continue to grow, much like Richard Branson said, in 30 years' time. I don't think that have offices. Any questions?
Who's keep on with that? You mentioned the idea of rotating Scrum Masters. Tell me what's the problem with context?
It's not necessarily a problem. This is why I come up doing it, because I actually put it down as something to do with the last Scrum Master, but I'm curious. I know curiosity killed the cat, but I was interested to see what happened if we did it. So at the moment we've got quite an established routine, and it works, but I'd just like to see what happens if we did rotate the Scrum Master. And I would caveat it by saying we will go back to using the one very good Scrum Master we got, if that is fair.
Experimental.
Yeah, I'd like to see the scientific method, I'd like to see if it works and it's correct. And
Other questions for Olly?
Remote working is a value proposition. I mean, to you, yes, but to your company.
I axed a lot of my presentation from this because it was going on too long, but I did initially start. The mistake I made, and the reason it took me from 2008 to 2010 to go remote working, is I focused on myself for those 2 years. So I said, well, I want to go and live in St Agnes, I want to surf more, I want to be part of the community, and I didn't get anywhere. And the realisation was exactly that point. You have to sell it to the business, it has to be something for the business. So my stance on that is that you're not going to get someone like me into an office at 6:30. You're not going to keep me there till 11:30 at night. But remote working with my flexibility means I'm more than happy to do that because it works around me. I can start to tune the day around my time. So I can give IBM 8:30 to 9:30 on the day when I'm most productive. And those 3 hours, that's IBM's time. That's when I feel productive. That's when I feel charged. I can start to tune and fine tweak. And as a result, I'm more productive. The productivity then leads to more value. And if you apply that across the whole team, you end up getting. There's also a financial trade-off as well, because how much would a desk be for me a day in Southampton? I mean, that's my base location. I go to Southampton 50 quid, 100 quid.
40,000 miles a year.
Well, yeah, exactly, and the travel costs as well. 40,000 miles a year, admittedly that was billed to a client, but still, that's a huge amount of time that I could have been billable and productive in another scenario. So, but that was another slide in that whole other section of the presentation I charged, unfortunately. But it's a very good point, thank you. You have to sell to the business as a value proposition first if you ever want to succeed in doing it.
You also sort of set suitable stand-ups, the 9:30 fixed time thing. How long do they run? Is it consistent?
15 minutes.
50?
Yeah, at the start we were a nightmare. At the start you could easily run up to 40 minutes because we've got quite a few developers. We try and keep it a little bit flexible, so if you've got something more important to do, it's okay to miss one or two, and that reduces the number slightly, but we try and encourage everyone to go. We try and fix it on 15 minutes, and now we're about 10 minutes, so we very rarely have to force a cut-up anymore, and people are quick to do it. And we did think about breaking it down, so you broke it down to products, and you did it co-located, you could be a lot more efficient, you could do it at a better time. We actually found that the benefit was that people really, really enjoyed learning about what other people do, and that cross-pollination of, I'm stuck on this, hey, I've got some spare time, really helped across the whole entire team and across all the products, not just focusing on the one product that particularly stressed.
If the standard led to identifying other required conversations, how big was the window of opportunity? I'm just thinking about the time zone.
Yeah, that's not so great. We're talking about 2:30, 3:30 type of that time. So they're running a few hours within the independent team before they go. Obviously we don't go talk about now, but we kind of do that in the Scrum Core reflects that it's not the start of the day. So they're more updating what I've done that day, what I'm thinking about doing tomorrow, and that kind of offsets. And because we're so used to it, what I thought would be a problem doesn't really materialise and kind of sorts itself out. And again, the autonomy of Agile is just brilliant at that moment.
I mean, other question, I'm asking Ollie a question myself. From a work point of view, what's been the highlight of the remote working journey and the low light?
The highlights is I had 2 reasonable promotions that I struggled to get in consulting that I didn't think would be possible. So you may remember one of my biggest fears was that I'd be forgotten, I was easy to get rid of, and it would be very difficult to climb the career ladder. And actually, remote working, because of the flexibility, because of the value I'm being able to add to the business, has allowed me to get 2 promotions, and I genuinely love my job, I love the working pattern. The lowlights are, everything comes at a price. So I'm online at 6:30, and sometimes I'm online at 11:30 at night, and sometimes I'll be on the same day. But you know, that's something I'm looking to fix as well. If I learn to delegate better, if I learn for Agile to work more autonomously, if I put more investment into the team, I'm hoping that will trade off. But that's the one to be careful of, is the burnout. Because the minute we get burned, I think someone had a great moment in their talk where they said if you're stressed for 2 weeks, there's 2-week recovery time associated with that. So it does feel very much like burnout at some point, and it is very hard to get away from things. And then you think, oh, it's all right, I'll go on holiday, I'll just take my laptop. Yeah, but I can work with internet connection, so is it a holiday? No, because I've just checked in to make sure that this was done correctly. I've just checked in to make sure that UAT weeks were. That's the low point, really. The flexibility comes back full circle of life, you know.
Any final questions for Ollie?
How often your team, the whole team gets together?
We've never got together. Well, not all of us. So I'm lucky enough to go to Hyderabad once every 2 years, roughly. I meet in Hersley with the Hersley component probably once every 6 weeks, and we've never got together. I mean, the cost of bringing everyone together, there's nearly 60 people in our team, would be prohibitive, not to mention the time lost to travel and everything else like that as well. So it would be lovely to do one day, and I've got a sort of naive idea that I would drive all through Europe and go and see all my teammates as a holiday. But it's
By
really,
the Nürburgring.
yeah. There are a few in Germany, it's funny that, isn't it?
Can we just thank Ollie then for his presentation?